My name is Dante, and I am 54 years old. I have been an electrician for 31 years, working for the same company, coming home to the same house, sleeping next to the same woman. That morning, the coffee smelled the same as always. The sunlight came through the kitchen window the same way it had for 26 years. But something was different. Gloria would not look me in the eyes. I did not know it then, but that was the last morning I would ever call this place home. Before we go any further, let me ask you something. Where are you watching from today? Drop your city or country in the comments below. I would love to know who is out there listening, and if you have ever trusted someone completely only to have that trust shattered. Stay with me. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and settle in. Because what happened next, even I could not believe it. I met Gloria when I was 26 years old, and she was 24. She had this laugh that could fill a room, and when she smiled at me for the first time, I knew I wanted to spend the rest of my life making her smile like that. We got married in a small ceremony, nothing fancy, just family and a few close friends. Her mother cried. My father shook my hand and told me to take care of her. I promised him I would. The early years were hard. Money was tight, and we lived in a small apartment that had water stains on the ceiling and a heater that only worked half the time. When Marcus was born, I took on a second job. I would work my regular shift at the electrical company, then drive across town to do maintenance work at a warehouse until midnight. Gloria stayed home with the baby, and I would come back to find her asleep on the couch with Marcus in her arms. When Brianna came along 3 years later, I started picking up night shifts. There were weeks when I slept maybe 4 hours a day. I remember one time I fell asleep standing up at a job site, and my foreman had to shake me awake. But I never complained. That was what a man did for his family. That was what my father taught me. I was proud of what I built. We moved into a real house when Marcus was 5. 3 bedrooms, a backyard with a little garden, a garage where I could work on projects. I paid the mortgage every single month for 26 years. I gave the kids a good childhood. They went to decent schools. When Marcus turned 18, I sold my father's old truck, the one he left me when he passed, so Marcus could have a car for college. I never told anyone how much that hurt. There were things I gave up. Promotions that would have meant moving to another state. Vacations that we could not afford because the kids needed braces or the roof needed fixing. I watched other men my age buy boats and take trips to Florida, and I told myself it did not matter. I had my family. That was enough. But looking back now, I can see the cracks that were forming long before the walls came down. About 3 years before everything fell apart, Gloria started going to these reunion events with her old college friends. At first, it was once or twice a year. Then it became every few months. She joined a gym, started buying new clothes, spending more time in front of the mirror. I thought it was a good thing. I thought she was finding herself again after all those years of being a mother. I noticed the phone calls too. She would be sitting in the living room, and when her phone rang, she would get up and walk out to the porch to answer it. I asked her once who she was talking to, and she said it was just an old friend. I believed her. Why would I not believe my own wife? The distance between us grew so slowly that I barely noticed it. We stopped sitting together on the couch at night. She started going to bed earlier or later, always at a different time than me. The last time we were intimate, I cannot even remember when that was. I told myself it was normal. We were getting older. Couples in their 50s did not have the same spark as newlyweds. That was just life. And the kids. Marcus graduated, got a good job in the city, and I thought he would call more often. But weeks would go by without a word from him. When I called him, the conversations were short, like he had somewhere better to be. Brianna was closer to her mother, always had been. When she came home for holidays, she spent most of her time with Gloria, whispering and laughing about things I was not part of. I felt like a stranger in my own home sometimes, but I blamed myself for that. I had worked so much when they were growing up. Maybe I was not there enough. Maybe I did not know how to connect with them anymore. I thought if I just kept being steady, kept being reliable, things would eventually come back around. I was wrong about that. I was wrong about a lot of things. The day my world collapsed started like any other Tuesday. I finished my shift around 4 in the afternoon and drove home with the radio playing some old country song about a man who lost everything but found his soul. Funny how life works sometimes. When I pulled into the driveway, there was a car I did not recognize parked in front of the house. A silver sedan, brand new, with a logo on the side for some real estate company. A man in a gray suit was standing by the front door looking at his phone. When he saw me get out of my truck, he walked over with this big smile on his face. "Congratulations on the sale," he said. "Everything went through smoothly. We just need to know when the family will be vacating the property. The new owners would like to take possession within 30 days. I stood there in my own driveway, still wearing my work boots and my company jacket, and I did not understand a single word this man was saying. "What sale?" I asked him. "What are you talking about?" He looked at me like I was joking. "The sale of this house," he said. "Your wife signed all the paperwork last week. It is a done deal." I pushed past him and walked into the house. Gloria was sitting in the living room on the couch we bought together 15 years ago, the one with the little coffee stain on the armrest from when Marcus spilled his cup as a teenager. She was calm, too calm. She had a glass of wine in her hand, and she was looking at me the way you might look at a stranger who wandered into your home by mistake. "Gloria," I said, "what is going on? What is this man talking about?" She took a sip of her wine before she answered. "I sold the house, Dante. The papers are signed. It is done." I felt the floor shift under my feet. "You cannot sell the house without me," I said. "My name is on the deed. You need my signature." She smiled, but there was nothing warm in it. "I took care of that," she said. "You sign a lot of things without reading them, Dante. You always have." I thought about all the times over the years she had handed me forms, tax documents, insurance papers. "Sign here," she would say, and I would sign because I trusted her. Because she was my wife. Why, I asked. "Why would you do this?" "Because I want a divorce," she said. "I want out of this marriage. I have wanted out for years, but I was waiting for the right time. The right time. I met someone," she said. "Someone who makes me feel alive. Someone who sees me. His name is Victor. We reconnected at a reunion 2 years ago. He is everything you are not." I could not breathe. It was like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed my heart until there was nothing left. 28 years. 31 years of work. Every sacrifice I ever made. Every night I came home exhausted and kissed her forehead before I collapsed into bed. "It all meant nothing. You owe me this," Gloria said. "I gave you the best years of my life. I raised your children. I kept this house running while you were off playing hero at work. Now it is my turn to be happy." I tried to speak, but my voice would not come. I looked around the room at the pictures on the wall. Marcus as a baby, Brianna at her high school graduation, Gloria and me on our wedding day, young and hopeful, with no idea what was waiting for us down the road. "I need to talk to the kids," I finally managed to say. Gloria shrugged. "Go ahead. But they already know. They agree with me." I went out to the porch because I could not stand to be in the same room as her anymore. I called Marcus first. He answered on the third ring, and before I could even explain what was happening, he cut me off. "Dad," he said, "you need to accept this. Mom deserves to be happy. She has given everything for this family, and now it is her time. Just let it go." "Marcus," I said, "she sold our house. She is taking everything. Do you understand what that means?" "I understand that you are being difficult," he said, "just like you always are. Mom warned me you would react this way." He hung up on me. My own son hung up on me. I called Brianna next. She did not answer. An hour later, I got a text message. "Do not call me anymore. I am on Mom's side. Leave us alone." I stood there on the porch of the house I had paid for with my own hands, the house where I had raised my children, and I realized I had nothing. My wife was leaving me. My children had turned against me, and I had no idea what I was supposed to do next. But somewhere deep inside, beneath all the pain and the confusion, there was a small voice. It was quiet at first, barely a whisper. But it was there. "They cannot do this to you," the voice said. "You will not let them." The motel room smelled like mildew and cigarette smoke that no amount of air freshener could cover. The carpet was stained with things I did not want to identify, and the mattress sagged in the middle like it had given up on life a long time ago. The light above the bathroom mirror flickered every few seconds, casting strange shadows across the walls. This is where I ended up. After 31 years of work, 28 years of marriage, this was my reward. A $40 a night room on the outskirts of town, where the only sounds at night were trucks passing on the highway and the occasional argument from the room next door. The first night, I did not sleep at all. I just lay there on that sagging mattress, staring at the water stains on the ceiling, trying to make sense of what had happened. 24 hours ago, I had a home. I had a family. I had a life that made sense. Now I had nothing but a duffel bag of clothes and the truck parked outside. A few days later, I found a lawyer. Her name was Patricia Holloway, and her office was in a small building downtown, squeezed between a dry cleaner and a barber shop. She was in her mid-40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense way of speaking that I appreciated. I told her everything. About Gloria, about the house, about the sale that happened without my knowledge. She listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she put down her pen and looked at me. "Mr. Dante," she said, "what your wife did is called fraud. She forged your signature on legal documents. That is a crime. Can we prove it?" I asked. "We can try," she said. "I need you to find any documents you have copies of. Old signatures, old contracts, anything we can use for comparison. And I need to look into the financial records. If she moved money around before the sale, that is additional evidence." I spent the next few days digging through the few papers I had managed to take with me. Old tax returns, bank statements, copies of documents from years ago. The more I looked, the more I realized how blind I had been. There were transfers I never authorized, accounts I never knew existed. Gloria had been planning this for a long time. During those dark days, I learned what it felt like to be truly alone. The people I thought were my friends disappeared. Gloria had gotten to them first, spinning her version of the story. According to her, I was the villain. I was the neglectful husband who drove her into the arms of another man. I was the father who cared more about work than his children. I ran into our neighbor Harold at the gas station one morning. We had been friendly for years. I helped him fix his fence once, and he lent me his lawnmower when mine broke. When he saw me, he looked away and hurried to his car without saying a word. Even Gloria's brother Thomas, who I had considered family for nearly 3 decades, would not take my calls. I left him a message explaining what had happened, asking him to at least hear my side. He never called back. The money situation was worse than I thought. Gloria had drained most of our joint account before I even knew what was happening. All I had was a small savings account I had opened years ago, a few $1,000s I had been putting aside for emergencies. This qualified as an emergency, but it was not going to last long. Not with lawyer fees and motel bills piling up. I started skipping meals to save money. A cup of coffee for breakfast, maybe a sandwich for dinner, if I was feeling generous with myself. I lost weight I could not afford to lose. Then one evening, there was a knock on my motel room door. I opened it to find Earl standing there. Earl was a guy I had worked with for nearly 20 years. We were not best friends exactly, but we had shared countless lunch breaks and complained about the same bosses and covered for each other when one of us needed time off. He was a big man with a gray beard and hands that looked like they had seen a lifetime of hard work. He was holding a paper bag that smelled like fried chicken. "Heard what happened," he said. "Figured you could use a real meal." I did not know what to say. I had not talked to anyone except my lawyer in over a week. I just stepped aside and let him in. We sat on the edge of that terrible bed, eating chicken and drinking cans of soda he had brought, and I told him everything. He listened the way only another man who had seen hard times could listen. Without judgment, without trying to fix anything, just taking it all in. When I finished, he wiped his hands on a napkin and looked at me. "You cannot stay here," he said. "This place will kill you. I have a spare room at my house. Nothing fancy, but it is clean and there is a window. You can stay there as long as you need." I started to refuse. My pride was the only thing I had left, and accepting charity felt like losing even that. Earl shook his head. "This is not charity," he said. "This is one man helping another man who got knocked down. You would do the same for me, and we both know it." That night, after Earl left, I sat alone in that motel room and let myself feel everything I had been holding back. The anger, the grief, the humiliation. It all came pouring out, and for a while I was not sure I would survive it. But then I remembered something my father told me when I was young. He had lost his job once during a recession, and for months our family struggled. I asked him how he got through it. "Son," he said, "when they push you down to the dirt, that is when you find what you are made of. That dirt becomes your foundation. You build yourself back up from there." I looked in the bathroom mirror at the man staring back at me. He looked tired and beaten and old, but he was not finished. Not yet. I picked up my phone and called Earl. "I will take you up on that offer," I said. "And thank you." That was the first step. It was small, but it was forward. And forward was the only direction that mattered anymore. Earl's spare room was everything he promised. Small but clean, with a window that looked out over a little patch of garden where his wife used to grow tomatoes before she passed away 3 years ago. There was a single bed with a quilted blanket, a wooden dresser, and a chair in the corner. Nothing fancy, just like he said. But after that motel, it felt like a palace. The first few mornings, I would wake up at dawn and just lie there, staring at the ceiling, letting myself breathe. No flickering lights, no highway noise, no smell of despair soaking into the walls. Just quiet. Just stillness. It had been so long since I allowed myself to be still. Earl did not hover. That was the thing about him. He understood that a man needs space to find his footing. We would eat breakfast together sometimes, usually in silence, just two old guys sipping coffee and watching the morning light creep across the kitchen floor. He never asked how I was feeling. He did not need to. He could see it in my face, and he trusted me to talk when I was ready. After about a week, I went back to see Patricia Holloway. This time I came prepared. I had dug through every piece of paper I could find, and I had started to see the pattern. There were signatures on bank transfers that did not look quite right. The loops on my initials were wrong. The pressure of the pen was inconsistent. Patricia laid everything out on her desk and studied it with that sharp focus of hers. "This is good," she said. "We have enough here to make a strong case. But there is more." She pulled out some documents of her own. "These are financial records I obtained through legal channels," she said. "Your wife did not just forge your signature. She transferred over $50,000 from your joint account to a separate account. And that account belongs to Victor Ashford. Victor. The man Gloria left me for. The man who made her feel alive while I was out working to keep the lights on," Patricia continued. "I did some digging into Mr. Ashford. He presents himself as a successful real estate investor. The truth is, his company is bleeding money. He is in debt up to his neck. The money from your house sale was not for a new life with your wife. It was to bail him out of his own failures." I sat back in my chair trying to process what she was telling me. Gloria gave up everything, our home, our marriage, our family, for a man who was using her. She does not know, does she? I asked. Patricia shook her head. "I doubt it. People like Victor are very good at showing only what they want people to see." I went back to work the next day. I had taken some time off, but I could not afford to stay away any longer. My foreman asked if I was okay. I told him I would be. He nodded and handed me my assignments for the day, and that was that. No pity, no drama. Just work. And that is what I needed. Work. The feel of tools in my hands. The satisfaction of solving problems. The routine of doing something useful. Every wire I connected, every circuit I tested, was a reminder that I still had value, that I could still create something even when everything else was falling apart. The guys at the job site noticed something different about me. I was quieter than before, more focused. One of the younger workers, a kid named Danny who could not have been more than 25, asked me if everything was all right at home. I told him home was a complicated word at the moment. He did not ask again. About 3 weeks after I moved into Earl's place, my phone rang. It was Brianna, the daughter who told me to leave her alone. The daughter who chose her mother's side without even asking for my version of events. Her voice was different than I expected. Not cold like before. Nervous. Almost embarrassed. "Dad," she said. "I need to ask you something." "Go ahead," I said. She paused for a long moment. "Victor promised he was going to help me get an apartment. He said he had connections, that he could get me a good deal. But now he is saying he cannot do it. Something about cash flow problems. Mom says I should ask you for a loan, just to cover the deposit and first month's rent." I let her words hang in the air between us. My daughter, who had told me to stop calling her, was now asking me for money. Not because she wanted to rebuild our relationship. Not because she realized she had made a mistake. Because Victor's money had dried up, and I was the backup plan. I took a deep breath before I answered. "Brianna," I said, "you made a choice. You chose to believe your mother without even listening to me. I am not angry about that anymore. But I cannot help you right now." "Dad, please," she said. "I really need this." "I understand that you need it," I said. "But you have to understand something too. Respect is not something you can turn on and off when it is convenient. You cannot tell me to disappear from your life and then come back when you need something from me. That is not how this works." She was silent. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line, waiting for me to change my mind. But I did not. "I love you," I said. "I always will. But I will not be used. When you are ready to have a real conversation, call me." Until then, I hope you figure things out." I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking, but not from weakness. It was something else. Something I had not felt in a long time. Strength. Later that week, Patricia called me into her office again. She had put together a comprehensive case. The forged signatures, the unauthorized transfers, Victor's financial troubles, all of it documented and organized and ready to present. "We can file the lawsuit this week," she said. "You have a strong case. We are suing for fraud, for the return of all funds from the house sale, and for damages. If everything goes well, you could have your money back within 6 months." I signed the papers that afternoon. Every stroke of the pen felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. I was no longer just reacting to what had been done to me. I was taking action. I was fighting back. As I walked out of Patricia's office, the sun was setting over the town, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. I stopped on the sidewalk and just looked at it for a moment. For the first time in weeks, I did not feel like a victim. I felt like a man with a plan. And that made all the difference. The mediation was held in a conference room on the 4th floor of a downtown office building. Neutral territory, Patricia called it. A place where both sides could sit down and try to work things out before taking it all the way to court. I arrived early, wearing the only suit I still owned. It was a little loose now after all those skipped meals, but it was clean and pressed. I wanted to look like a man who had his life together, even if I did not feel like one. Patricia was already there, setting up her files and documents at one end of the long table. She gave me a nod when I walked in. "Remember," she said, "stay calm. Let me do most of the talking. We have the facts on our side." A few minutes later, the door opened and Gloria walked in. And there he was behind her. Victor. I had seen pictures of him by then. Patricia had shown me his business profile, his social media pages, all the ways he presented himself as this successful, powerful man. But in person, he was smaller than I expected. Shorter. His suit was expensive, but he wore it like someone who was not used to wearing nice things. His eyes moved around the room constantly, never settling on anything for long. Gloria looked different too. Thinner, with shadows under her eyes that makeup could not hide. She was still beautiful in a way, but it was a tired kind of beauty, like a flower that had been cut from its stem and was slowly dying in a vase. Her lawyer was a young man with a nervous energy, flipping through papers and whispering in Gloria's ear. When they sat down across from us, Gloria finally looked at me. Just for a moment. Then she looked away. The mediator, an older woman with gray hair and reading glasses, called the session to order. She explained the process, the rules, the goals. Then she asked Gloria's side to present their position. Gloria's lawyer cleared his throat and began. "My client simply wants a fair resolution to this matter," he said. "She spent nearly 3 decades building a life with Mr. Dante. She raised his children, maintained his household, supported his career. She deserves her share of the marital assets." He went on for a while, painting a picture of Gloria as the long-suffering wife who had finally found the courage to pursue her own happiness. He talked about emotional neglect, about feeling invisible, about being trapped in a loveless marriage. I listened to it all without saying a word. Patricia had warned me this would happen. They were going to try to make me look like the bad guy. I just had to let them finish. When it was our turn, Patricia stood up and calmly laid out the facts. She presented the forged signatures, showing clear evidence that documents had been signed without my knowledge or consent. She presented the bank records documenting the unauthorized transfers to Victor's account. She presented the financial investigation into Victor's failing business, proving that the money from the house sale was used to cover his debts. As she spoke, I watched Gloria's face. At first, she tried to maintain her composure, but as Patricia continued, cracks started to appear. Her jaw tightened. Her hands gripped the edge of the table. When Patricia showed the evidence that Victor's company was facing bankruptcy, Gloria turned to look at him. "What is she talking about?" Gloria asked. "You told me your business was doing fine." Victor did not answer. He stared straight ahead, his face pale, his eyes fixed on some point on the wall behind me. "Victor," Gloria said louder this time. "Is this true? Did you use our money to pay off your debts?" Silence. The room was so quiet I could hear the air conditioning humming in the ceiling. Finally, Victor spoke. His voice was thin, almost whiny. "You do not understand how business works," he said. "Sometimes you have to move money around. It is just temporary. I was going to pay it back." "Pay it back," Gloria repeated. "Pay it back," with what he did not have an answer for that. I watched as the reality of her situation settled over Gloria like a weight. She had given up her marriage, her home, her relationship with me, all for this man. And he had been using her the entire time. Her eyes filled with tears. Real tears this time, not the performative kind she had shown at the beginning. She buried her face in her hands and started to cry. The mediator called for a brief recess. When we reconvened 20 minutes later, Gloria was still red-eyed, and Victor had moved his chair several inches away from hers. Gloria's lawyer looked defeated. He conferred with Gloria for a few moments, then turned to the mediator. "My client is willing to discuss a settlement," he said. Patricia did not hesitate. "We want the full amount of the house sale returned to Mr. Dante. We want all fraudulent documents voided. And we want Mrs. Dante to accept full responsibility for the forgery charges in the civil case." "That is outrageous," Gloria's lawyer started to say. But Gloria cut him off. "Fine," she said. "I agree." Everyone looked at her in surprise. "I just want this to be over," she said. "I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. Just let it be over." As we were wrapping up the session, the door opened one more time. Marcus and Brianna walked in. They must have heard that something was happening today. They came to support their mother, I assumed. But when they saw her sitting there with her makeup smeared and her shoulders slumped, they stopped in their tracks. "Mom," Marcus said. "What is going on?" Gloria did not answer. She just shook her head and kept crying. Brianna looked around the room, her eyes moving from her mother to Victor to me. "What happened?" she asked. I stood up from my chair. "The truth happened," I said. "The truth that nobody wanted to hear from me." I walked toward the door, and my children stepped aside to let me pass. For a moment I stopped and looked at both of them. "When you are ready to talk," I said, "you know where to find me." Then I walked out of that room and did not look back. The sun was shining outside. It felt like the first warm day in a very long time. The court proceedings moved faster than Patricia had predicted. With Gloria's admission during mediation and all the evidence we had compiled, the judge made quick work of the case. Within a few weeks, I had the ruling in my hands. The full amount from the house sale was to be returned to me. All documents bearing my forged signature were declared void. Gloria was found liable for civil fraud and ordered to pay my legal fees on top of everything else. As for Victor, his troubles were just beginning. The investigation into the money transfers led to a broader examination of his business practices. His company was shut down pending further review. The last I heard, he was facing multiple lawsuits from other people he had deceived over the years. Gloria lost everything she thought she was gaining. Victor left her within days of the court ruling. No goodbye, no explanation. He just disappeared, moving on to whatever scheme was next. She ended up moving in with her brother Thomas, sleeping in a small room in his basement. The friends she had bragged to about her new exciting life suddenly had no time for her calls. Marcus called me about a month after the ruling. His voice was different than I had ever heard it before. Quiet. Humble. "Dad," he said, "I lost my job." I waited for him to continue. "Victor had promised to connect me with some people in his network," he said. I was counting on that. When everything fell apart, those connections went with it. The company I was with found out I had been using work time to pursue those leads. They let me go. I did not say anything right away. Part of me wanted to remind him of all the times I tried to warn him, all the times he dismissed me or hung up on me. But what would be the point? "What are you going to do now?" I asked. "I do not know," he said. "I am staying with a friend for now. Trying to figure things out." I took a deep breath. "Marcus," I said, "I am not going to lie and tell you everything is fine between us. You hurt me. You and your sister both. You chose to believe the worst about me without even giving me a chance to explain." "I know," he said. His voice cracked. "I know, Dad. I am sorry. I accept your apology," I said. "But apologies do not rebuild trust. That takes time. It takes effort. If you are willing to put in that work, then maybe we can find our way back to each other. But I cannot do it alone. You have to meet me halfway." "I will," he said. "I promise I will." Brianna reached out a few weeks later, but only through a text message. She was not ready to talk on the phone, she said. Not ready to face me. I told her the door was open whenever she was ready. I meant it, but I also knew I could not force her to walk through it. With the money returned to me, I had a decision to make. I could have taken it and started over somewhere new. Found an apartment, put the past behind me, moved on with my life. But there was something I needed to do first. I contacted the people who had bought my house. They were investors, Patricia told me, planning to flip the property for a profit. They had not done any work on it yet. When I reached out and asked if they would consider selling it back to me, they were surprised, but willing to negotiate. It took a few weeks of back and forth, but eventually we reached a deal. I paid a fair price, maybe a little more than I should have, but I did not care. Some things are worth more than money. The day I signed the papers and got the keys back, I drove over to the house by myself. I parked in the driveway, the same driveway where that real estate agent had stood, and congratulated me on a sale I knew nothing about. I sat in my truck for a long time, just looking at the place. It was empty now. No furniture, no pictures on the walls, no sign that anyone had ever lived there. Just rooms and walls and windows. But it was mine again. It had always been mine, no matter what anyone tried to take from me. I walked through the front door and stood in the middle of the living room. The carpet was the same still, with that little coffee stain from when Marcus was a teenager. The kitchen still had that view of the backyard where I used to grill on summer evenings. The bedroom where I had slept for 26 years was just down the hall. I closed my eyes and let myself feel it. Not the sadness, not the anger, just the simple fact that I was here. I had fought for this. I had won. Out loud, to no one but myself and the empty house, I said it. I made it, Dad. I did not give up. And for the first time in months, I smiled. The first few weeks back in the house were strange. I had almost no furniture, just a bed I bought secondhand, a small table and 2 chairs, and a coffee maker that I set up in the kitchen before anything else. The place echoed with emptiness, every footstep sounding loud in the bare rooms. But it was a good kind of emptiness. Clean, full of possibility. I started fixing things up slowly. I painted the living room a new color, a warm shade of gray that felt modern but still comfortable. I replaced the old kitchen faucet that had been dripping for years, something Gloria always complained about, but I never got around to fixing. I pulled up the old carpet in the hallway and discovered hardwood floors underneath that just needed some sanding and polish. Earl came over on weekends to help. He would bring his tools and a six-pack of beer, and we would work side by side, not talking much, but enjoying the company. His wife had loved projects like this, he told me once. She was always making him rearrange furniture or build shelves. He missed having someone to do that for. One Saturday, while we were installing new light fixtures in the dining room, he asked me how I was really doing. Not the surface answer, but the real one. I thought about it for a while before I responded. Some days are harder than others, I said. Some mornings I wake up and forget for a moment that everything changed. Then I remember, and it hits me all over again. He nodded. That is how it was for me after Linda passed. You think you are over it, and then some little thing brings it all back. But here is the thing, I continued. I do not feel angry anymore. Not the way I used to. The anger was eating me up inside, and I had to let it go. How did you do that? He asked. I wrote her a letter, I said. Gloria. I wrote down everything I wanted to say to her. All the hurt, all the disappointment, all the questions I would never get answers to. And then I burned it. He raised an eyebrow. Did it help? It did, I said. Not because she would ever read it, but because I needed to get it out of me. I needed to put it somewhere other than my own heart. That evening after Earl left, I sat on the back porch with a cup of coffee and watched the sun go down. The yard needed work. The garden was overgrown, and the fence had a few boards that were rotting. But I had time. I had nothing but time now. I started going to a support group for people going through divorce. I found it through a flyer at the community center, and at first I felt foolish walking in there. A room full of strangers, all of us carrying our private pain, sitting in a circle, and talking about things we could barely admit to ourselves. But it helped. There was something powerful about hearing other people's stories, about knowing I was not the only one who had been through something like this. I did not share much at first. I just listened. But gradually, I started to open up. One of the regulars was a guy named Raymond. He was about my age with a similar story. His wife had left him for someone else too, and his kids had taken her side. We started talking after the meetings, and before long we were meeting up outside the group. He liked to fish, and he invited me to join him one Sunday morning at a lake outside of town. We sat in his little boat as the sun came up, casting our lines into the still water, and we talked about everything and nothing. About the women we had loved and lost. About the children who had disappointed us. About what it meant to start over when you thought your life was already decided. It feels like I wasted 30 years, I told him once. Like I gave everything to people who did not appreciate it. Raymond shook his head. You did not waste it, he said. You lived it. You did what you thought was right. That is not a waste. That is integrity. He paused, reeling in his lines slowly. The only waste, he said, would be if you let what happened back then keep you from living now. I thought about that a lot in the days that followed. About 4 months after I moved back into the house, Marcus came to visit. He had found a new job, something entry-level, that was a step down from where he had been, but he was working. He showed up at my door on a Saturday afternoon, looking nervous, holding a bag of groceries. I thought maybe I could make us dinner, he said, if that is okay. I stepped aside and let him in. We did not talk about everything right away. He cooked, I watched, and we ate together at my small kitchen table. It was the first meal I had shared with my son in almost a year. Eventually, the conversation came. He apologized again, more fully this time. He told me about the guilt he had been carrying, about how he had been so focused on impressing his mother and Victor that he forgot who had actually been there for him his whole life. I listened, and when he was done, I told him what I told him on the phone. I forgive you, but we need to build something new between us. We cannot go back to how things were. We have to go forward. He nodded. He understood. Brianna still has not reached out. Not yet. I keep the door open for her, but I do not chase. I have learned that you cannot force people to see what they are not ready to see. Maybe she will come around someday. Maybe she will not. Either way, I will survive. As for Gloria, I have not spoken to her since the mediation. I heard through Marcus that she is struggling, that the friends she thought she had were never really friends at all, that she is lonely and regretful and starting to understand what she threw away. I do not feel satisfaction hearing that. I do not feel joy in her suffering. I just feel sad. Sad that it had to end this way. Sad that she could not see what she had until it was gone. But my sadness for her does not mean I want her back. That chapter is closed. The pages are sealed. I am writing a new story now. This spring, the apple tree I planted in the backyard started to bloom. I did not even know if it would survive the winter, but there it was, covered in white and pink blossoms reaching toward the sun. I stood on my porch one morning, coffee in hand, looking at that tree, and I thought about everything that had happened over the past year. The betrayal, the pain, the long climb back to something like peace. I am not the man I was before all this happened. That man was naive, maybe a little too trusting, too willing to sacrifice himself for people who did not value the sacrifice. That man is gone. The man standing here now is different. Older, wiser, a little more careful with his heart, but also more awake, more present, more aware of what truly matters. I used to think my value came from what I could provide for others. From the paychecks I brought home, the roof I put over my family's heads, the endless work I did to keep everything running. I thought if I just gave enough, I would be loved enough. Now I understand that love does not work that way. Real love is not a transaction. It is not something you earn through sacrifice. It is something that grows between people who see each other clearly, who respect each other fully, who choose each other freely. I did not have that with Gloria. Maybe I never did. But I have it with myself now. I have learned to respect myself, to value myself, to choose myself. And that is worth more than any house or any marriage. If you are watching this and you are going through something similar, I want you to know a few things. First, you are not alone. Whatever they did to you, whatever they took from you, there are others out there who understand. Find them. Let them help you carry the weight. Second, the pain will not last forever. I know it feels like it will. I know there are days when you cannot see any light at all. But the darkness does not have the final word. You do. Third, your value is not determined by how others treat you. The fact that someone betrayed you, that someone walked away, does not mean you deserved it. It means they could not see what they had. That is their loss, not yours. And finally, it is never too late to start over. I am 54 years old, and I am just now learning how to truly live. Some people never learn that at all. So maybe I am one of the lucky ones. I am not the man who got left behind. I am the man who chose to walk forward. And that more than anything else is the victory. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been in a situation where someone you trusted completely let you down? How did you find your way back to yourself? Drop your story in the comments below. Let us build a community of people who understand what it means to fight for your own dignity. And if this story meant something to you, hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the next one. Share this video with someone who might need to hear it today. You never know whose life you might change just by passing along a story of hope. Thank you for staying with me until the end. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. You gave me your time, and that is a gift I do not take lightly. Whatever you are facing right now, I hope you find your strength. I hope you find your peace. And I hope you know deep down where it matters that you are worth fighting for. Take care of yourself. And I will see you in the next one.